Hey, welcome to Board with Life News for June 10th. Today I'm going to talk about Stefan Feld's news, Porta Nigra, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, as well as the Kickstarter for Battle Cruisers. Let's get to it. Hey, I'm Chris. Welcome to Board with Life News. You should be checking out our podcasts. We have the two podcasts, the D&D podcast. I've told you about it a bunch. You already listened to it. That's great. We also have Houses and Humans, which I've told you about before. We're running an ongoing Apocalypse World game, but we've done our first kind of one-off game where Houses and Humans is going to have a bunch of different indie RPGs represented. So we're doing right now on the podcast is Dog Eat Dog, which is a very fascinating indie role-playing game that we're doing. It's about colonialism, as exciting as that sounds. And Donald, Nikki, Andrew, and I, which you know from our D&D podcast, are joined by Kyle Van Winkle of Spooning Meeples, as well as Hunter Shelbourne of Weapons Grade Tabletop. So definitely go give that a listen. There are links in the show description below. All right, on to board game news. I've got 3 whole bits of Stefan Feld news, which is exciting for me because he's probably my favorite designer. So yay for me, and maybe you. You might like him too. Some people do. Tasty Minstrel Games announced that they are reprinting Luna, which came out in 2010. This was early game of Stefan Feld that was a pretty big hit, and the print run ran out. This was before he kind of picked up the steam and became the household name, assuming your household is filled with board game nerds, that he is today, before Castle Burgundy, stuff like that. So it's been out of print for a while. It's coming back in print. I'm very excited about this. Next, according to a German website called Brett Spielbox, Feld is playtesting 2 new prototypes. Normally, I don't report on stuff that doesn't have release dates or at least publishers or things like that. But as I said, Feld's my favorite designer, so I'm making an exception. And Castles of Burgundy is my favorite game. Maybe. Might be my second favorite game. It switches. And the 2 prototypes are for Castles of Burgundy, the card game, and Castles of Burgundy, the dice game. Lately, dice games have been killing it. Normally, dice kind of have gotten a sort of bad rap in the board game community, but I think Pandemic the Cure is awesome. I think Roll for the Galaxy is awesome. I think Nations Dice is awesome. So I'm pretty pumped about this dice game. It doesn't have any publisher or anything, so it's not even guaranteed that they'll come out, but I can only assume that every publisher would kill to have Castles of Burgundy, the dice game, or the card game. And a lot of people were like, well, Castles of Burgundy is already a dice game, which, I don't know. It's a game with dice. I wouldn't say it's a dice game. Like, the dice are just one aspect of one mechanic of that game, whereas I think a dice game, they play a much larger role. But I'm super pumped about it, and I will definitely keep you updated if and when they come out. Stronghold Games has announced Porta Nigra is going to be their first in their Great Designer series. And at first I was like, having a Great Designer series kind of, I mean, there's so many great board game designers and you don't have to like go like, oh, there's a series. And then your other designers are going like, these ones aren't so good. But it's going to be by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. Wolfgang Kramer has 5 Spiel des Jahres awards. He's won more than anyone else. So I guess you can call him Great Designer, and 2 of those awards he won with Michael Kiesling, their design team that's done a bunch of games, to Call and others. Porta Nigra is a 2 to 4 player action programming, area control, worker placement game where you build buildings and they have actual like little 3D pieces that you build up. So it looks nice on the board. I can only imagine that this game will be good because it's in the Great Designer series. So how could it not be? WizKids has acquired the license to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or I don't know if they acquired the license. They're partnering with Nickelodeon for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles tabletop games. They've already announced that they're going to make a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Dice Masters, as well as Hero Clicks, so that is no surprise there. To their 2 huge gaming lines, they're going to include it in that. I wouldn't mind seeing like a good Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles tabletop game, like a dungeon crawler that's in the sewers or something, but, you know, I guess I'll take what I can get. Apparently, the coolest part of this is that they have the rights to like all of, I guess, the animated history of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So they're going to have like characters from all the different iterations, like the 80s character designs up to like the new kind of chibi-esque, very CG designs that they have going on now. So it's interesting. I like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a lot. I probably won't pick up either of these games just because both of them are a huge money suck, but whatever. I'm glad that they're being made into games. The Kickstarter this week is Battle Cruisers from Tasty Minstrel Games. Battle Cruisers is a very quick, highly customizable game. Basically, you have a hand of cards, and you pick a card and play it. If you're the only if you're the only person that plays that card, you get its special ability. But if more than one player plays that card, you guys both get penalized. So it's a lot of like kind of getting in your opponent's head stuff. Very interesting game, very quick playing. It's only $25 right now on a Kickstarter, so definitely go pick that up if you're interested. It's set in the Imminent Domain universe, which is one of their biggest titles. And on that same Kickstarter page, you can actually buy a new expansion for Imminent Domain. I'd also recommend that you... I'm stuttering all over the place, and I'm too lazy to re-edit this. Actually, I'm too hot. I'm sweating right now. It's very hot in Texas. So I'm not going to fix it. Sorry. But you should check out the Kickstarter video, because you might see some familiar faces. It's me. And other people. But me. I'm in it. Go look at it now. All right, that's the news for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you like us, subscribe, follow us, and check us out on iTunes or however else you listen to podcasts. I can't stress enough how good our podcasts are. They're really good, so I'm just saying. All right, this week's question comes from @MeepleGuy via Twitter, and they ask, what is your favorite board game expansion? Something that added so much you would never play without it. It's not an expansion, but the games Dominion and Carcassonne, I think, benefit so much from their expansions. I think Prosperity is probably my favorite Dominion expansion, but I also like Dark Ages because it does really weird stuff and changes the game a lot. So it's no one expansion for either of those games. They both have a bunch of great expansions, and they add so much replayability to those games that they're almost necessary for my enjoyment now, just because I played the base games of those enough that I don't want to play them without them anymore. Maybe for individual expansion, Bruges City on the Zwin, I think did a really good job at kind of taking that game up a notch. So yeah, I think Kingsburg has a really, really great expansion, but that's not so much the great expansion as there were some slight problems with the base game of Kingsburg that the expansion fixed. So I wouldn't play it with the expansion only because the expansion's so good, just because there were some errors. Not errors, just design choices that a lot of people didn't like in the base game. So yeah, that's my answer. All right, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.